A deaf and mute Mongolian man has spent more than 80 days at the Otay Mesa detention center. His sister, a U.S. citizen, is willing to sponsor him, but the federal government is trying to deport him. Andrea Montavon McKillip is the man's immigration lawyer. She says this case is an example of how President Donald Trump's executive orders have eliminated due process protections. She says her client crossed the border at San Diego in February and immediately turned himself in to Border Patrol agents.
He gave them a letter that was written in Mongolian and translated into English, and they refused to accept it. They refused to even look at it. And that letter explained that he feared returning to Mongolia and wanted to apply for asylum.
KPBS agreed to refer to him by his nickname Bay, due to fears that disclosing his identity would jeopardize his case. The Border Patrol handed Bay over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, who took him to the privately run detention center in Otay Mesa. Bay was placed in a fast-track deportation process called expedited removal. Normally, under expedited removal, people who express fear of returning home are given a screening with a trained asylum officer. If they establish credible fear, they get to see an immigration judge. Trump's executive order removed that screening process. Instead, Bay went through a different assessment without his lawyer present.
The most he could do was write on a piece of paper Mongolia and then use body language to indicate that he's afraid. Okay, that's all he could do.
Montavon McKillip believes that the ICE interpreter used American Sign Language, not Mongolian Sign Language. Bay couldn't understand most of the interpreter's signs.
So he's looking at a sign language interpreter through a screen who he can barely understand. I mean, he understands maybe a few signs here and there.
Yet, the officer determined that Bay was not in danger back home, putting him at risk of being deported.
I think it's a great example of how immigrants are receiving no due process. I mean, you're interviewed in a language you don't understand by someone who works for DHS, as a DHS employee. You're not taken in front of a judge. You don't have anybody neutral or unbiased who's looking at your case.
The executive order that ICE is using to justify this treatment is called Guaranteeing the State's Protection Against Invasion. It portrays immigrants without legal status as a public safety risk. Montavon McKillip says Bay is not a criminal, and there is extensive evidence for him being persecuted in Mongolia.
Because of his disability, he was seen by others in the community as defective, as less than human, and he was beaten severely on multiple occasions by bad actors. He reported them to the police. The police did nothing. These people were never arrested. In one case in 2020, he ended up with a traumatic brain injury. On another occasion, he had bones broken. So there's no protection for him.
KPBS confirmed that Bay is currently in a private detention center run by the company Core Civic. Montavon McKillip says he's been there 80 days. ICE did not immediately respond to a request for comment. According to a 2024 budget analysis, it cost taxpayers on average $217 a day to detain someone in San Diego. That's more than $17,000 of taxpayer money spent keeping Bay detained. His sister, Bima, is willing to house him for free.
Yeah, I have a room ready for him, and then I have a nice townhome in Virginia.
Like Bay, Bima asked KPBS not to share her full name. Bima says she's afraid of speaking out, but feels that it's important for other people to hear her brother's story. All she wants is for him to have a fair shot at humanitarian protection.
Give him a chance, to tell his story. So we are asking is fairness on his part.
Bima says her brother feels completely alone in the detention center, mostly because he's unable to communicate with anyone from staff, medical workers, or other detainees.
It's not just that he's been detained, but it's that he's completely cut off from understanding or participating in what's happening to him. So, and that's what breaks my heart.
Early this week, Montavon McKillip filed a motion to prevent Bay's deportation. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.